the first time that I had the opportunity to ever go to Italy and Rome and different places that one always goes while over there, it was, the succession, very rapid succession of seeing incredible things for the first time, checking all the boxes and seeing in wonder these places and, rightfully in awe of beautiful places, amazing sights, ancient churches, and the like. But it struck me the second time how much different the perspective was than the first. And perhaps none more so than the difference I felt on my second trip to Assisi. The first time, on that first trip to Italy, Assisi was a day trip amongst everything else. Rush out, get on the train, go see the basilica, see the sights, pay the visits, along with all the other tourists, go back and on to the next thing the next day. The second time was in Advent, about a week before Christmas, which is not the height of tourist season. And that time stayed in Assisi overnight and got up the first morning before dawn, felt moved, which if you know me, that's not a normal inclination just to get up before dawn for the fun of it, but got up before dawn and decided to walk. And it was an incredibly foggy day. I didn't encounter another soul in the mist walking those ancient medieval streets, and I came to the basilica in the quiet, went in and had the chance to pray alone. And then as the Franciscan community came in, joined in with the praying of solemn lauds with the Franciscan community, and it was a deeply moving and intimate experience, so unlike the first one, which had been wonderful but was so busy, was so just full of commotion that it didn't really take hold until the second visit. It was seeing something from a completely different perspective, living something as opposed to just observing it, seeing it. In a similar way, today, despite being the first day of a new liturgical year, we have a chance of a repetition, which seems a bit strange. Our lectionary cycle is turned over. We ended cycle C, now we're back to cycle A today, and yet on back-to-back Sundays, last Sunday with the Solemnity of Christ the King, and today with the first Sunday of Advent, we hear the exact same responsorial psalm. Same refrain, "Let us go rejoicing to the house of the Lord." Only difference today is a few more verses included than last week. Why? Why the repetition? Is it a lack of creativity by those who organize the lectionary? Is it just a psalm, Psalm 122? Is it just someone's favorite? Or is it an opportunity to look from a different point of view? In Advent, we always keep in mind that while we celebrate beginnings, they're not beginnings that we're celebrating out of nothing. It's not a beginning that immediately follows an end, but it's a seamless transition. In Advent, we look both backwards and forwards. Sure, we're anticipating the coming of the Lord at Christmas. We can look backwards in a sense of that account, and yet we continue to look forwards as we've been doing for his second coming, for the end of time. The prophet Isaiah that we hear today and that we hear throughout Advent, the prophecy of Isaiah speaks to both, points to the coming of the Messiah at Christmas and points to the fulfillment of all of God's covenant with his people at the end of time. It's a hinge. It's a transition. It shows the complex nature of Christian spirituality, looking at what the Lord has done and what is yet to come. It's very different in this new beginning. It's not like if you're binge watching a show on TV like reruns, where you get through all the seasons and you watch the last episode and it ends, and then episode 1 of season 1 comes on next, and you're like, oh, back to the beginning again. That's not what Advent is for us. We look to beginnings with the end in mind. And so it's odd that as we start Cycle A with the Gospel of Matthew, a fresh gospel for a fresh year, we don't hear from chapter 1 today. In fact, we hear from chapter 24 near the end, near the account of the Passion. In fact, the first Sunday of Advent is always more eschatological. It's our chance to look towards the end things, the fulfillment of all things. Next Sunday, the Sunday after that, we'll get to John the Baptist. But the primary message we hear today isn't just get ready or like the prologue of a story, but stay awake. Not wake up for the first time, not be born, but stay awake. We hear in the words of Jesus that the end will come while people are oblivious and consumed with the things and activities of the world. Much as in the days of Noah, they were going about their business and then everything was swept away. The end will come and people will not see it coming. This points to the end of time, and it points to our own individual ends, the unknown hour of our own deaths. Therefore, stay awake, for you do not know on which day your Lord will come. You'll note it's obvious. He's not talking about December 25th. In the second reading, Paul gives a list of things that keep us spiritually drowsy. He names orgies, drunkenness, promiscuity, and lust, rivalry, and jealousy. And amongst this, we hear things that are omnipresent today. We certainly hear a list of sins. Okay, we know that different forms of lust and sexual temptation, excess and sobriety, rivalry, petty concerns, fights, jealousy, lack of gratitude. These are things that are timeless in the human condition. And yet it's beyond just the sins, it's the worldly absorption, being consumed with the things of the world. And to this, Jesus and Paul with one voice say, stay awake. Don't fall into spiritual drowsiness. Don't be like after the Thanksgiving meal when the tryptophan takes over and you begin drifting off on the couch. Stay awake. I spoke of this experience in Assisi and in Rome, and in fact, that trip to the Basilica that morning was not the only way in which the experience was different. One of my favorite things, and I've perhaps visited Rome more times in December than at any point of any other month of the year. And I really love Rome and Italy in December. It's not as hot, and it's less crowded, that's good. But even more so is the absence there that I'm used to here. What is that absence? The noise. If you walk around in Italy, you don't hear Christmas carols on December 21st. You don't have an endless succession of Christmas parties starting on November 30th every day forward. You don't have commercialism in your face at every turn. Advent is Advent, and Christmas is Christmas. In fact, it's like a giant pregnant pause, the way it's meant to be. At Christmas itself, the joy explodes forth. And then there's the festive sense. Then there's the Feast of St. Stephen next day when everything's closed. You have the successions, the joy of Christmas. It goes for days and days and days. But until then, there's a quiet waiting. Not like here where Christmas sales start in September. The quiet of Assisi, the quiet of Rome, the quiet of Advent. It's something we need. Not just something we're asked to do, it's something we need. Or else we miss out on the rest. if we don't ever make room to anticipate what's coming, then the gift is missed. There is no true joy of Christmas without Advent. There is no receptivity of Easter without Lent. There's a reason the church celebrates these penitential seasons beforehand, because we need the quiet to get ready. Or else, when the gift comes, we're like the child on Christmas morning that rips open the gift, looks at it, and sets it aside and says, "What's the next one?" And so, during this time, my brothers and sisters, we need to embrace the mortification that's part of the Christian life, but particular to this season. No, Advent is not as strong of a penitential season as Lent. There's not the days of abstinence and fasting and all that, and yet, nonetheless, we need to make room for those little self-denials. We need to embrace quiet. As I said, resist the temptation to turn on Sunny 99.1. Sorry if anyone here works for the station. Avoid listening to Christmas music for the next 4.5 weeks, and then it turning off on December 26th. We need to avoid the constant consuming of activities, of just jumping forward, of running frenetically to the point where when Christmas comes, you can celebrate it and then just be exhausted and say, "Oh, I'm glad that's over." That's not the spirit of Christmas. That's not what we're supposed to be doing right now. So the quiet, preparing ourselves in the sacrament of penance, extra time in prayer, little denials, the things that can prepare us for the great gift to come. The other place that is quiet, as we will hear when Christmas comes, is Bethlehem. Jesus does not come into the world with great fanfare, with crowds waiting outside the gate. He comes into a humble place in the quiet of night, seen only by those who happen to be there and are attentive. That truth reveals to us the third aspect of Advent. God is present now. We look back to his first coming, we look forward to his second coming, but most of all, we are called to be more cognizant that the Lord comes to us and is here now. In the second reading, we heard Paul say, "You know the time. It is the hour for you to awake from sleep." But I thought Jesus said we don't know the hour. Paul isn't speaking of the hour of his coming. The hour of our readiness to receive the Lord is now. This is the time of attentive receptivity, not shallow indulgence. And so, I think we need to hear the words of that second reading one more time. Brothers and sisters, you know the time. It is the hour now for you to awake from sleep. For our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed. The night is advanced, the day is at hand. Let us then throw off the works of darkness and put on the armor of light. Let us conduct ourselves properly as in the day, not in orgies and drunkenness, not in promiscuity and lust, not in rivalry and jealousy, but put on the Lord Jesus Christ and make no provision for the desires of the flesh. If we celebrate Christmas like a birthday party and nothing else, then it will remain shallow and superficial for us, and it will change nothing. It'll be another way of counting another year that has passed since last Christmas. We'll have some more photos, some more gifts, some more junk to clutter our closets, but life will be unchanged. But if we celebrate Christmas like the mystery of salvation and God's love, having profoundly prepared for it, meditated upon it, then life can never be the same. Our hearts will be awakened with amazement at the profundity of God's love, and our hearts will burn with anticipation for the fulfillment of what God has started. We will no longer fear death, but will pray, beg for the day of the coming of the Lord. And then, and only then, will we be able to join in the chorus of the Church of heaven and earth as all creation cries out, Maranatha, come, Lord Jesus.